Welcome to the CareRight podcast, your go-to resource for all things elder care. Guiding us through this journey is Annalee Kruger, the founder of CareRight Incorporated, and she has been steadfastly supporting families across the United States. Each episode brings you expert insights, innovative strategies, and practical advice, ensuring that you're well equipped to provide the best possible care for your loved ones. Expect to gain valuable knowledge, learn from real-life stories, and get inspired to take action in your own caregiving journey. So buckle up as we dive into an in-depth discussion of elder care planning and together embrace the journey of caring for aging loved ones on the CareRight podcast.
Welcome to Protect Your Stuff with the Matar Firm. Thank you for joining us on this Sunday morning. I'm your host, Claudia DeJesus, and I'm the managing partner of the Matar Firm in Bonita Springs. A little bit about our firm before we begin. We focus on estate planning and asset protection. And asset protection is just that. It's making sure that your assets are protected from any creditors, predators, lawsuits, and making sure that your assets flow to who you want them to in the form that you want them to. So a lot of our clients, we like to think of our business as holistic. We incorporate different aspects. We have, caregivers and financial advisors that we meet with our clients. And we're so excited to have Annalee Kruger from CareRight Inc. on our show. She joined us last week and we talked a lot about the grab and go binder, things that you really need to be thinking about having and how really it's never too late to plan. We can, if a crisis arises, there are resources around you that can help you, but it does make life all the easier if you take the time to plan ahead. But regardless, there are strategies that can be taken when there is a crisis or you're in a pre-planning mode. So if you want to learn more about this and also about CareRight, please feel free to come to one of our workshops. We host these every week and they do fill up fast. So you can give us a call at 239-222-2222. And our workshops are called How to Protect Your Stuff in 3 Easy Steps. But now let's get to Annalee. She is fantastic and her company is amazing. And they have so many services that they offer to the Southwest Florida area. And not just Southwest Florida, but also nationwide, which is huge when we're talking about how spread out families are. So welcome, Annalee.
Thank you, Claudia.
So tell us a little bit about CareRight. I know you spoke about it last week, but we've got new listeners, so we want them to also be aware.
Sure. Thank you. So I was a social worker and long-term care administrator for 23 years, and every day had families in my office because there was a medical crisis, which caught the family members off guard. They would come in to take a tour of the community. The tour would only take about an hour. Here's the beauty shop, here's the dining room, here's the room, here's the activity room. But I was spending 2 and 3 hours at a time with each family. And why? Because of family dynamics. We always, we never got along because my brother Tom said something stupid 15 years ago at Thanksgiving, and that was enough to fracture the family relationships. Well, now that there's a medical event with your parent or your parents, now everyone kind of has to get along. And it's really difficult to do that when your family is in kind of an angst type of relationship with each other. So the other reality was that families just typically don't have these kind of conversations about what is our plan with mom and dad, or seniors themselves, like, hey, we don't want to talk about these kind of things because if we talk about the aging plan, then maybe I'll have to go into a nursing home or I'll have to, do something different with my life. But the reality is if you plan ahead, you give yourself more opportunity and more say in what happens to you and your destiny. If you don't plan ahead and there's a medical event, you go wherever there's an open bed, and that may or may not be the right fit. And so I always encourage people to plan ahead because it does give you more peace of mind, and it saves you and your family time, money, and stress. Another way of planning ahead is the grab and go binder we talked about last week, but we'll touch on that really quickly this time. Is the other thing that I have found with families is not only do they not have these kind of conversations as a family about the aging plan, where is mom and dad going to live, who's going to take care of them, and how is care going to get paid, but they tend to also fall short a little bit on having these conversations about, do you have a living will in place? Do you have a power of attorney? What are your wishes? If you become sick, what are your wishes from a medical perspective, from a financial perspective? But also in that grab and go binder, not only their legal documents, but also the face sheet. And the face sheet is the demographic face sheet of who's your attorney, who's the CPA, who's the financial advisor, what do you have for health insurance, life insurance, long-term care insurance, who are your medical providers, who is it that you call if there's an event, do you have a caregiver that you've hired privately, what's their name and what's their phone number? Because what I can tell you is that when those daughters or sons get that phone call, they don't know any of this stuff if you don't communicate it.
Right.
And so the other thing quickly to put in that grab and go binder too is not only all of the insurance stuff, but where's your bank? Do you have a bank box? Where's the key? Where's the key is the other thing.
A full assessment of your life because someone is coming in from the outside and
they need to pick up where you left off.
And people are very private. And so, they're not sharing these things on a day-to-day basis. And then this crisis scenario arises where you're in needing medical care or, you've become incapacitated. And if you can't speak for yourself, then at least your binder can offer this direction. Right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I wanted to touch on memory care today. Not just myself. It's more prevalent that we are having memory care issues. The age of dementia is lowering, which means that younger people are having early onset dementia. So from the Matar firm's perspective, we have clients come in and they know they've got some kind of memory care issue, and we help them design directives to protect themselves in case they choose to make a decision while their memory has been affected. So we've had clients come in that want to protect themselves from certain people that, hey, maybe in a year I'm not going to have the cognition or be able to remember that this person might be able to harm me. So also putting a plan in place while you still have that control is huge. So you're not relying on your doctors or you're not relying on your spouse or putting that burden on your children as well. So I wanted to get your perspective on memory care and how you what you foresee and what you recommend, especially when you have clients coming in with memory care issues.
Mm-hmm. So, and you hit the nail on the head, there is more and more early onset dementia. And so what does that mean? That means that people are getting dementia younger than they used to be. They used to be 70 and 80 and 90, and it's like, okay, well, yeah, it's just part of aging. Well, it's really not. It's really not. And so what we've been seeing the last 15, 20 years is people are getting younger and younger and having early onset dementia. So they might be in their 50s or 60s or 40s even. And so from a family caregiver perspective, what does that do to the family caregiver? So if we look at even, a few years ago, the age of a care recipient was 5 years younger than it is now, or 5 years older than it is now. So the age of care recipients is younger than 5 years ago. The care recipients used to be 65 and older. So in 2010, 81% of them were over age 65. And in 2015, that's 60%. So when you're looking at people getting sick younger, it really makes a difference if your spouse is still working and trying to work full time and take care of you. If you're in your 60s and you have early onset dementia, it's going to become an issue financially and physically.
That's huge. And you need to make sure that you are protecting your assets, and that you have to think, okay, so this rainy day, this medical event, this crisis is coming sooner. We need to plan ahead to make sure that we have the resources to anticipate, okay, if we've got early dementia at 65, that's going to be a huge cost rather than getting it at 75. And so how are we planning for the healthy spouse? Because they need to be taken care of, right? They still have their lifestyle that they have to keep, and also making sure that we're getting the ill spouse the care that they need and all of the resources they need.
One thing I just want, if there's one thing that the listeners take away.
Yes. I love this. I always say, if nothing else,
there's one thing, because I know that we're kind of throwing out a lot of concepts that might be new for people to think about, because they're like, oh, well, why do we need to plan ahead? Why does our family need to talk about these things? But if you have one thing that you take away, please, please, please know that Medicare does not pay for everything. almost every family that I meet with, when we talk about where are you at financially? What are your financial resources? Because in reality, that's going to determine what your goals can be. That's great if you want to age in place at home, but how did you plan properly for that then? Do you have the long-term care insurance? Do you have, how did you plan properly then? But most people, and the adult children included, think, well, Medicare will pay for everything.
Yes.
They'll pay for assisted living. It'll pay for a nursing home. It'll pay for home care. And I am here to tell you that it does not.
It doesn't. And that is the biggest misconception. People rely on Medicare. And the fact is that Medicare only pays for an average of 20 days.
Correct.
The minute that your condition becomes long-term, the minute that there's a question mark on when you're getting better, Medicare is done. And so what happens then, you either private pay a facility, which is on average about $9,000 a month. Even if it's $5,000, that's a huge expense. Or, we help people qualify for Medicaid, but that's a long process, and that's we facilitate that quickly, but that's a process that doesn't kick in. It's not like Medicare where you turn a certain age and it's a benefit that's afforded to you. That's something you have to apply for and you have to qualify for.
And you have to spend everything down. So when you say qualify, so families know what that means that you have to deplete what you have.
Well, yeah. Well, we're able to protect their assets in terms of making sure that they're placed into trust, and there's a lot of exemptions and exceptions that are available to people. But, if you're not going to someone that's specialized and understands Medicaid law specifically, then you're missing out a huge piece of what is afforded to you and what the government is allowing you to keep.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to keep talking a bit about memory care and also long-term care costs in Southwest Florida. So thank you for listening, and we'll be back after this quick break.
Has your spouse or parent recently been admitted to a nursing home? Are you interested in protecting your family's financial assets? Call the Matar Firm to attend a free workshop entitled How to Protect Your Stuff in 3 Easy Steps. The Matar Firm focuses on helping families with asset protection using the firm's Medicaid pre-planning and crisis planning system. Call the Matar Firm at 239-222-2222 to attend the free workshop. Law Office in Bonita Springs. Call 239-222-2222.
Welcome back. Before the break, Annalee from Deteriorate Inc. and I, Claudia DeJesus from the Matar Firm, we're talking about memory care and dementia and how long-term care costs are really a threat to your estate, and you need to plan ahead to know how you're going to provide for the healthy caregiver and also your ill loved one that might have dementia or Alzheimer's or early onset dementia. And during the break, Annalee and I were chatting, and she said something that I really like. You said having your voice now. So when people are getting diagnosed with these memory care issues, they do still oftentimes have a window, right, where it hasn't advanced enough. Or it hasn't advanced to the point where they can't put in a plan in place in terms of getting the legal directives that you want, and also meeting with someone like you and Deteriorate to make sure the family plan is set and make sure all of your medicals are set, because legal is one thing, but then there are also different gaps. You have to think of aging as an entire puzzle. So, I know that I have several clients that come in and they do have memory care issues, and that's okay. We can still put a plan into place. We can plan ahead with what's going to happen and what do you want to prevent that you might not be able to tell me that you want to prevent in the future. Who do you want to get your assets? Who do you want to be in control, that you can say that now, that you might not be able to say that in the future, but you can at least not only is it a love letter to your family, it's a love letter to yourself in your anticipated condition, right? Mm-hmm. So
you definitely want to put your voice on paper, because unfortunately with dementia and memory impairment issues, it's progressive, so it's not going to get better. And it's usually, depending on what kind of dementia it is, but it's usually gradual, but not always. And so If you have noticed memory issues with yourself or memory issues with your spouse or your aging parents, this is a good time to have some conversation and bring in a neutral third-party person to have some conversation about how is this going to affect our family?
Absolutely.
Because anything with the aging process, what one thing happens to mom and dad, I promise you will affect all of you, because someone's going to have to miss work. Someone's going to have to probably jump on a plane. Someone within the family is going to have to figure out, okay, now what do we do? Because this happened. And that puts families in so much stress that it doesn't need to be that way. If you have these conversations and hire a neutral third party person to talk about that now rather than later.
Something you pointed out as well that I think is a forgotten about individual is making sure, you always talk about making sure that the caregiver, making sure the spouse is doing okay. Tell me more about that, because when I called you about a certain case, I was really focused on the client, right? Mm-hmm. That had the memory care issues. And you really brought to light the fact that we need to be considering the healthy spouse.
The caregiver.
Whoever
the caregiver is, whether it's this healthy spouse or the adult child. I actually wrote a book about this, and it's going to be coming out in April. But it's called the family caregiver, the invisible patient, because everyone always is asking, like even when you're with your social friends, oh my goodness, how's your dad holding up? Well, Dad's doing fine because I'm missing work to get him to the doctor's appointment, to get him to therapy, to take him to the day program. Everybody, so the person that you're taking care of is usually doing quite well, but it's to the detriment of the caregiver,
right?
Who's maybe healthy, but maybe now not as healthy, because if it's a spouse taking care of someone, you're going to start noticing likely weight loss, changes in their mood, changes in personality, where they might be a little bit more bitey, but it's because they're not getting their own needs met. A lot of people that call me for services, they're burned out. Mm-hmm. And usually, and this is sad and pathetic, but usually they'll say, well, you're the first person that's ever asked me how I'm doing.
Right.
They take them to the doctor's appointments. They get their 7 minutes of FaceTime with the doctor. Doctor looks them up and down and is like, oh, yep, you look like you're doing good. Well, what about all this other stuff? That's why if we shift into a little bit of the advocacy role too, mom and dad tend to do well, but the doctors and the medical team need to also focus a little bit more time and effort and energy onto the caregiver.
Absolutely.
Because it's the caregiver that's the glue holding this whole thing together. And family caregivers, the spouse who's aging has a 63% higher mortality rate because they're not getting the rest, they're not getting the care that they need, they're missing their own doctor's appointments. Some of the caregivers are in worse shape medically. They have cancer that they're not getting treated. They are supposed to have a hip replacement, but they can't because they're caregiving to their spouse with dementia. So they're putting their own needs on hold, and that's what's killing them.
And that's something that everyone should be thinking about. Not only who is going to take control if I become incapacitated or if I pass away, but who is going to take control if my caregiver or if my beneficiary or whoever I'm appointing, who's going to take control if they're not there for me, mm-hmm. right? And we need to plan for that. And we do that with our estate plans. We say, okay, now this is your healthcare proxy, right? But who is going to be your healthcare proxy if this individual isn't here?
Right.
Who do you want to be your trustee if your trusted loved one, your spouse, whether it be your daughter, what if they predecease you? Mm-hmm. These are things, they're tough conversations to have. I know you have them all the time. But they're things that we need to think about and talk about, because if not, it's going to be even tougher in the long run.
It will. And when we talk about memory impairment and dementia, most families are really unaware of how demented their loved one is, mm-hmm. because we talk about how the caregiver tends to cover. Like, oh, your mom is doing fine. She's doing better today. Yes. Well, there's no better and worse. It's just going to be a gradual decline. And so what happens is if dad is the caregiver to your mom with memory impairment, or you're the spouse and your spouse has memory impairment, what is the actual plan if something does happen to the caregiver? Because usually at some point, a loved one with memory impairment is just not safe to be home by themselves. And so we either need to bring in a home care company that's trained properly, which that's a whole nother topic, but we need to.
Right. It's a puzzle, people. It's not just one thing at a time.
Yeah, it's not a one size fits all. You really have to interview these organizations and these people that you're bringing in to take care of your loved one. But the other reality is that, where is your loved one going to live? If dad is the caregiver to mom who has memory impairment and dad needs to go in for hip surgery, or dad has a stroke and now mom's vulnerable, and so is dad. If there's no plan, they're both vulnerable. And so then that's when the kids call me is like, oh, this happened and we don't know what we're going to do. We live up north, or, this is a second marriage. He's not our dad, but what are we supposed to do with him? And so these are really tricky and dicey conversations for families to try to do on their own because they don't know what they don't know. But I can tell you that if you're not on the waiting list of some memory care units in your area, whether it's down here or up north, and if you're not on the waiting list of like assisted livings or some retirement communities, it really is risky because a lot of them have a waiting list. And a lot of families don't realize you have to financially qualify. So you have to know where your loved one is financially, or if you're the spouse,
absolutely,
you have to know where you are financially because that really will determine what your options are. And so if you can't pay private pay for 4 or 5 years up front, then some of these communities won't let you in if you can't pay that entrance fee.
Right.
And so, and if you need one level of care and your spouse needs another level of care, do you really want to be across town because you didn't plan ahead?
Right. No, exactly. And people need to be thinking about this and planning ahead. And also we talked about the fact that it's unfortunate, and my family is personally going through this right now, but there is a level of denial. And you talked about that with me. And the denial also comes into the procrastination factor. It's so easy to say, no, we're just aging. Maybe we're just becoming forgetful, or mom doesn't have this early onset dementia. And so you procrastinate putting a plan in place. You procrastinate having those legal directives. And what does that result in? It's a result in loss of control. And also, it's just going to make things harder when the individual who has this dementia, when it progresses, right? And so, like you said, being on a wait list. So if you have someone coming to you with early dementia, what do you recommend that they go on a wait list now? Would you recommend in a couple? At
least to have the conversation. Yeah. So that's part of that assessment and family meeting is I assess how, I do a memory exam, I do a depression scale, make sure that they've had a physical, because maybe it's not dementia, maybe their blood work is off, or maybe they started a new prescription and that's causing more of what's called delirium.
Right.
But let's make sure that there's an actual thorough assessment and evaluation medically and physically and psychologically, and then I can help you put the plan together so we all work together as a team in the community. Yeah. And I can tell you that with Hurricane Irma, a lot of people had called me before Hurricane Irma just to find out, what do you do? Well, mom and dad are doing just fine. Well, the kids live up north, right?
Yes.
And I always tell people when I do the free 30-minute consult that I am very sure that your parents are not doing as well as you would like to think. Because parents want to be, protect their privacy, protect their independence. And so guess what happens? Hurricane Irma happens. A lot of these adult children flew their parents up north to get them away from the hurricane, right? And so then the kids call me back and they're like, oh my gosh, you were so right. We didn't know that mom was so confused. We didn't know that dad falls every day. And so that's what I'm saying. If you're an adult child, I'm pretty sure that things might not be going as well as you would like to think so. And that denial or just not knowing can really cost you a lot in family emotional stress and strain. But also the same thing with your parents. If one of your parents has dementia and you're just really not up to facing it yet, denial is an okay place to be until it's not.
Right.
And at some point, it's not going to be okay.
Annalee, thank you so much for joining us. And if this is resonating with you, if you have any questions, whether they be about memory care, about caring for a loved one, making sure you have the right legal directives in place, and making sure that you have the proper assets to pay for this anticipated care, and making sure that your assets are protected, please call the Matar firm. Please call CareRight. The Matar firm's number is 239-222-2222. we ask that you join our free workshops. We offer those to the community, and you can give us a call and we'll enroll you. And then Annalee, also, please let us know of your number.
My phone number is 239-770-6322. And my website is www.carerightinc.com.
Fantastic. Thank you. And I think we'll have to have you on in the future because there are so many pieces to this puzzle. And, if nothing else, right, just start thinking. Everyone needs to just start thinking of who they want to be in control and also the plan that they have for aging, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
absolutely.
I think you agree as well.
Yep.
Thanks for listening, and we will see you next week.
Thank you for tuning into the Care Right podcast. We hope today's discussion has provided you with valuable insights. If so, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share our podcast with others who might find it helpful. Remember, Care Right is more than just a podcast. It's a community dedicated to supporting family caregivers with comprehensive care planning, crisis management, and resources for every stage of aging. Stay connected with us for future episodes as we continue to explore essential topics in aging planning, elder care, and financial planning. Until next time, take care, plan wisely, and remember, you're not alone in your caregiving journey.